Do you have like regrets that you didn't go back?
It's a good question. Sometimes I do. I really enjoyed the people I played tennis with. So I do have some regrets because I think there's always that question of what could I have done? Because I did spend a lot of time playing growing up. So yeah, I may have some regrets.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Keith.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
That's good.
I want you to start us off today by talking about what you did this morning with Child 1 and what it got you thinking about. And I think that'll lead us into some interesting conversation.
Okay. This morning, Child 1 and I went and played tennis. So he was invited to play with a couple people from school because he wants to join the tennis team. And he wasn't quite sure if he wanted to go or not go. I said, well, why don't we go and hit the ball around a little? Because I thought it might make him more comfortable. He has really good hand-eye coordination. It's just we haven't hit with a racket for probably a year, right?
Or more.
So we went to the tennis courts that don't have nets on them yet and just hit a little bit against the fence, practice some serving, just the motion. I showed him a few things. And yeah, so we spent a little time doing that. Then I dropped him off with some people from school and then picked him up.
We both wanted him to kind of go, right? And play on the playground with the other kids kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a little background? Because I don't know if you've talked about the fact that you played tennis growing up.
Yeah. Tennis for me was something that I played all through high school. I did summer camps, probably in middle school, just like the community ed, like get together, hit the ball around. My family would go play once in a while. I loved people like Steffi Graf and Pete Sampras. I watched the US Open, Wimbledon, all the things. So I played a lot. I played 1 year in college as well. And I was always that person that had her big bucket of balls. I was sitting there practicing our serve. So if I didn't have anything going on, I had like this yellow thing that you could put, I don't know.
A ball caddy.
Yeah, a ball caddy, like 30, 50 balls into it. And so I'd stand it up and I would just practice serves. I'd pick them all up. I'd go to the other side. I'd do it again. I did that in high school pretty frequently. And I did that in college too. I found it was one of those sports that even if you didn't have someone to play with you, you could still practice. I don't know if you remember this. There was a wall down in one of the local parks that had like a line. And so you could go down and hit and play yourself against this just wall that was a wooden wall down there. And so I would do that quite a bit too. If I didn't have anything else to do, I'd go and I'd play myself against a wall. But yeah, so I played a lot of tennis growing up. Loved it.
So you were thinking about tennis this morning.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you only played 1 year in college.
Yeah.
Why only 1 year if you like tennis so much?
Yeah. Well, I think to start, I didn't try out or go for it my first year because I just wasn't quite sure that I would be good enough at the college level.
Okay.
But again, I was that person that was sitting out there.
So it wasn't your freshman year?
No.
Okay.
No, it was my sophomore year.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I actually didn't my freshman year. And then I was that person again out there with my bucket of balls, practicing my serves. And the tennis coach happened to walk by me by myself with, all my lonesome.
50 tennis balls.
50 tennis balls.
Like you got the gear.
I got the gear.
They're probably like, who is this person?
Practicing my serve. And they came up to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about joining the tennis team? I thought, well, not really, but that would actually be fun. And if they're the coach and they're asking me about it, maybe I am okay enough Right? Okay enough to possibly give it a go.
It's interesting. Wait, you kind of waited to be picked. Like, we don't have to go here, but I might cut this out. But
no, I did.
It's interesting to look back and see, like, you didn't enroll yourself in it. You waited for somebody to pick you.
Yeah, I didn't raise my hand. You're right. Yeah, I didn't because, again, I think what I was thinking, so in high school, I lettered in tennis, but I wasn't ever one of the number one single players. I don't think I even played singles. That wasn't my match. I always played doubles.
Okay.
I was a pretty good double player, but I wasn't the top of the doubles groups. So I think it just kind of was like, I did okay at tennis. I really enjoy it.
So how did that feel? Like, kind of knowing where you sat, like, I'm not number one, but you seem to have a drive to do it. Like, if you're playing by yourself in a sport in which a big part of it is somebody hits the ball back, that shows that you have.
I mean, my partner can't be a wall.
Well, that can get you so far, right?
True,
I mean, it's good.
True.
It shows determination to me and desire and drive. Lots of D words apparently. What were you saying?
So I was just saying that I didn't think. So the thing maybe where you're trying to get to is that I have this intrinsic motivation to keep showing up and participating because I enjoy it. But I don't feel like my participation in it is good enough for me to raise my hand to keep participating in it once I get to college. Maybe?
Okay.
So, tennis coach ran across me practicing my serve, told me that, I should go for it. And so I had this external nudge, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I decided my sophomore year to play. And so it took me all summer to try and get ready. I knew that to play tennis, you have to be in pretty good condition. And so every morning I'd wake up, I'd run, and then I'd get home. And, I had a pretty good routine, but I wanted to make sure I was in really good shape before the season started because I know that tennis can be a lot of, you got to hustle, right? You got to hustle.
Can be demanding.
Yeah. So I did that. I will say I still wasn't in the condition I needed to be. I remember running around campus and being like the last person in the group of tennis players trying to get around the loop, but I did it. I think I was really excited I did it. I played and I won some, I lost some, but I was part of a team.
You win some, you lose some.
Probably lost more than one.
Story as old as time. Huh?
Right. But it all came to an end when I broke my leg.
And how did you do that?
So I played most of the season, and then I broke my leg before we played at a state tournament because I was playing intramural broomball. And
which is basically running in boots on ice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was really pretty good because I was running all the time for tennis. I was in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was running all over and I collided with someone and I slid right leg first right into the boards of the hockey arena and I couldn't stand up off of the ice. So people had to come and help me up. And yeah, I had to go and get a cast and all that stuff. It was right before the last big thing, the tournament. It was the end of my season, my end of my playing of my season.
It wasn't only the end of that season, though. You said you only played 1 year.
Right.
So why didn't you go back?
Well, yeah, that's what you and I were talking about this morning. And I know that I started focusing on other things on campus. But the more I thought about it and the more we talked about it a little bit, there's also a part of me that didn't quite feel like I was good enough to go back. When I'm thinking about that and I'm digging a little deeper, it's not so much it's not that I wasn't good enough or wasn't a good tennis player. I think I just thought that maybe I wasn't good enough to go through all this trouble of coming back from an injury.
It's hard work, right?
Yeah.
And it's daunting.
Right. Because I remember being in a cast, having to be off my foot for the rest of the semester. And spring semester, I came back and I could put weight on it, but it was really hard to do.
Like painful or?
Yeah, painful. And also I hadn't used it. So my muscles in my leg were not strong. I remember having to just get the muscles going to walk.
We didn't have personal trainers on YouTube that could help us through this, right?
That's true. We
and
didn't.
Instagram and all
You're
these,
right.
all
Those
these
things were not.
right?
Right. And so I felt like it was hard enough to walk on it, which seems maybe a little silly. I was 20, you know. I think part of it was that in the off season, you have to continue with conditioning, and I jumped right into it. And so the next step was to do plyometrics. So lots of jumping, bursts, trying to keep your, cardio and strength up.
Yeah. Which is probably a little uncomfortable considering you're coming off of a freshly broken leg.
Right. Right.
That is hard enough to walk.
Right. And so I remember going to a couple of those sessions. They were really early in the morning before class, and they were hard. I didn't feel like I did them well. I always felt like I was the last one. I didn't give myself a whole lot of grace because I thought, I know you broke your leg, but you should be able to do this. And it was just hard, and I got frustrated. I just simply let that slip away, if that makes sense. I let the idea that I would continue being a tennis player just slip away.
Just kind of slowly, but then kind of all at once, right? Like that's kind of how those things happen.
Right.
I mean, looking back now when I was hearing you talk about that, I'm like, oh, that's resistance, right? You ran up against this wall. And my first reaction, and I was like, this might be something good to talk about, is, well, where was the support for you? Like where, there's this, and then you're like, oh, well, they were doing conditioning and stuff. And I'm like, yeah. You're like, but it was really hard. And I'm like, well, who did you tell? And you're like, no one. And I'm like, well, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
that's a really big thing, is like when we have these setbacks, right? It's like, what do we have in place,
right,
to help us through that dip? And it's not that it's wrong that you stopped, but where's that system to help you work through it, instead of maybe sometimes we feel like we just kind of throw our hands up and it feels like giving up versus deciding.
Right. Yeah. And looking back, I don't remember reaching out to my coach. I don't remember reaching out to the personal training team or the rehab folks. I just remember being like, well, this is hard. Maybe I'll come back when it's not so hard.
Yeah.
Which then at that point you're behind, right?
You feel behind. You obviously, if you feel like you're behind, then you're more likely to be like, well, I guess I'm not going to keep going. Things that pop in my head there is like, you're taking a lot of responsibility for not having reached out. And me, in my role of being one of your biggest supporters, right, in our partnership,
right.
I'm like, well, it goes both ways. Like, why didn't people reach out? Why weren't they there looking out for you or realizing that maybe this would be hard for somebody? It's not about placing blame, and that tends to be what we do. Again, it just comes back to like, where do we get those things balanced out and get right in our head with, these are the circumstances in which I find myself. I had certain expectations. Now I have this object that's in my way. I have this change agent that was out of my control. One thing led to another. I broke my leg. What's next? That's the biggest thing for me, is like, then what? Because if you don't do anything, you don't move forward in any path, right? Like if that's not the path anymore, that's fine. But if you don't pick a new one, you stagnate and you don't do stuff. Like that's where my head just starts spinning and thinking and getting like really in cerebral, and like, I just think like, oh, there's so many tools that I know about now that would be so helpful when I was younger and had setbacks like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and
hard enough now that I know there's tools.
right.
Get out of your own head, right?
Well, and even when I was thinking about it, my coach may have reached out to me, but I don't remember.
Right.
I know that I never even considered thinking about asking any of the athletic trainers for help or
I wouldn't have known either.
ideas. I would never have, because, and I think too, there's a part of me that thought, well, athletic trainers are for the sports that bring in the tickets, and bring people to the stadiums, right? They're for the football players, the basketball players. They're not for me, a tennis player who probably plays their doubles group.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that was, it's interesting because I wish I remembered more. But what I do remember is that I simply just didn't ask any questions or seek anything out.
Do you have like regrets that you didn't go back?
It's a good question. Sometimes I do. I really enjoyed the people I played tennis with. So I do have some regrets because I think there's always that question of what could I have done? Because I did spend a lot of time playing growing up. So yeah, I may have some regrets.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I did find myself doing, I mentioned briefly that I started focusing on other things. The fall of my junior year, I was an RA, a brand new RA, and I shifted a lot of what I was doing towards being more involved in that regard. I think sometimes, even though I have regrets, I do think that what I filled my time with was really beneficial too.
Yeah, what you shifted to. Yeah, for sure.
Right. I think the thing I regret more than not playing my junior or senior year, I think the thing I regret more is that I haven't played more in the last how many years?
20 some?
Yeah.
Couple decades?
Yeah.
Probably sounds even longer if you say decades.
Right. I actually bought myself a tennis racket for my birthday.
We're like a month and a half out.
You bought me a tennis racket for my birthday.
Oh, okay. I'll have to remember where I hid that.
It's in my car.
Oh. Good. I'll try to find a bow for it.
Sounds good. I think that's the one thing where I regret that I haven't found a way to play a little bit more informally.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why I haven't. I think some of it's just I tell myself I don't have the time, or I'm not as good as I once was.
So there's plenty of excuses.
Right. Yeah.
And so it sounds like you're pivoting away from that and looking to get back to it and incorporate. I mean, you got yourself a racket. Child one is interested.
Yep.
So now you won't have to think about, can I make Keith go do this?
Yeah.
I would like to go sometime.
Yeah.
I just want you to take it easy on me.
I'll try.
Not make me run so much.
But I like making people run.
I'll blow my knee out or something trying to go sideways.
Oh, don't do that. No, I would take it easy on you. I will say with child one playing, I have thought this is a great time for me to help him learn, but then also get me back to it.
Yeah.
So eventually, hopefully the nets will go up so I can play a little bit more with him. And as he learns more, he'll be more, more in the court than out of the court. And he's pretty good though, I will say.
Yeah. You said from just watching him a little bit and being with him a little bit, he's athletic. And I think we do a pretty good job of supporting that and nurturing that, but without projecting maybe our missing our sports. I don't go projecting that onto him.
Yeah.
But I do really enjoy supporting him in whether it was baseball or football when he was doing that when he was younger. or this. For me, it's really fun to support and just figure out like, what can I do to help you be successful in what you're doing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a theme for me. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. So much that I think I messed up my shoulder pitching to him so much.
Yeah, when he was playing baseball.
Yeah. I totally overdid it, and it took me I think about a year and a half to like not wake up with shoulder pain from finally like rehabbing it a little bit at a time, building it back up. But I'm pretty sure I'm like, oh, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Why does my back and my arm hurt so much? It's like, because you just threw like 100 pitches, and I'm not a pitcher. I did not play baseball past 7th grade, I don't think.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point though, because I think there's some similarity between if you have a setback and are trying to get back to it, or if you're just trying to get into it, that idea of little by little and not going full bore. I'm pitching how many thousand times. Like me, when I was coming back to do some of the plyo training, maybe if I had just done a little before jumping right into that, or if I talked to someone and tried to do some modified things, perhaps it would have played out differently. Right? Because I went from 0, you're on crutches, to let's walk for a couple weeks, to let's try and do like jump squats. Yeah. And that was silly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't led by my coach who knew my contacts. It was led by a coach for all off-season athletes, who wouldn't know my story.
Right.
And so they wouldn't know to look for that. Right. Of course I didn't raise my hand.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's like a communication thing, right? That as we grow, we learn like, okay, I have to be an advocate for myself. Right. If I want things to happen, like play tennis, I'm going to go show up on the weekends and play with the group that invited me. Like, we just want to be successful, right? But we also need to understand, like, well, what is success? And sometimes it's simply showing up the first time or returning after an injury and finding whether an opportunity is a setback or an opportunity to grow and gain something. If it doesn't go the way you're expecting, it's always a little off-putting.
Right.
And so sometimes you just kind of, like in your case, don't leap.
Don't do the jump squat.
Tiny steps. But when it comes to like what I'm thinking of, like our kid, dude, go leap into this. And like, yeah, you haven't done it before, but just jump over that edge and get in. And the next time will be that much better.
The other thing that is coming up for me too is about the importance of trusting our bodies and listening to our bodies. Mm-hmm. And I know we're not necessarily doing an episode on like rehab, not our background. But I think that's an important thing. And you could probably extend that to trusting yourself, right? Even if it's with a project or a thing that you're doing. And if something's uncomfortable or just not quite gelling or just not quite working, how do you simply just say, okay, the jump squats aren't working right now. Maybe I could modify that with a squat and like a calf raise, right? And also, well, see, here I am, because I'm thinking there are some things that I probably could have done more, but I was scared. And there were some things I could have done or I was trying to do, and I could feel the ache in my bone that this was not a good idea. And so I guess how do you parse out the difference, right, between that listen to your body and the trust your body, you're strong, or listen to your gut and trust that you can do more than you think you can do, right? There's a tension there, especially after a setback, because then you kind of lose some of that trust, or I do. If you have a setback, sometimes I lose like, ooh, maybe listening to my gut wasn't quite right.
Yeah, it makes you second guess. It makes you hesitate. It makes you pull back.
Right.
And, now I can say, well, yeah, and then that's a signal to, if I'm going to pull back, well, maybe that's the signal that I need to leap forward or push through that,
Yeah.
It's easy to say that in theory, but when you're going through something that feels like a rejection, like what if you didn't get that grant you applied for, or, something else with your job, or you didn't get the job you applied for,
right.
All of these setbacks just feel like a wall that you'll never be able to climb over or around. But for me, the point is, if it feels like that, I need to realize, like, I'm in a depleted state. How do I get more energy? How do I return back to zero? Because right now I'm negative. How do I get to zero and then maybe even a little positive? And like we've brought up before, it tends to be movement, but like if we're talking about like you breaking your leg, that's the hardest part, is right? Like,
yeah,
like thinking about that, it's like, well, your mobility was very restricted. No wonder it's even harder to come back from something like that, or it can be just as hard as something like losing a job or, not getting picked for the team or something,
Right. Yeah.
I don't have anything specific that's popping out, but I do know that the best way for me to overcome those feelings of, well, that's not going to work out, or that didn't work out. Like I failed, like those feelings like of failure, that it takes a little time. And the way for me to get by that is to kind of shift my energy towards more things that lift me up, I guess. But sometimes all you can do is just wait for that to feel right.
Right. And maybe that's what I did with shifting to focusing on being an RA back then. It's interesting because I haven't looked at the timeline so in depth for a long time, and I don't know if I ever have. It was just more of I played tennis, broke my leg, rehabbing it was hard, and then I was an RA.
Yeah. Well, that's what life is like when you're in your late teens, early 20s. It's hard to keep track of it all. It seems to be happening all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little older, you have a little more time to dwell.
And dig in.
Yeah. Stew a little bit, or
I could be playing Venus Williams. No, that would never have happened.
This all came up because our kid's doing tennis.
Right.
And there's no intention here of solving a problem for anybody or even you, right? It's just that it came up in your head because you played tennis and now he's going out for it. And when you were talking about it, just some of these things were coming up. I'm like, it's really, like, thinking about it now, I have this perspective that I wouldn't have had back in my 20s for sure. And I think what's coming up for me is, as he's going out and exploring and trying this, it's like all we really want is for him to be successful, whatever that means. It doesn't mean number one. It just means enjoying himself while he's trying something new and being part of a team and seeing what that's like, and if he likes it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And maybe we want that for him. And at the same time, it's brought up kind of that, well, why couldn't I also create that for me now? Even though I chose to set it aside, or I let it dissipate.
So say a little more about that. Like, are you talking about tennis specifically, or are you being a little more cryptic?
No, I'm talking I'm talking about tennis. But it, to be less specific to tennis, I mean, there are things that, so even here's another example. I don't think my mom would mind me talking about this. Growing up, she rose mulled a lot, and we go to craft sales and She had lots of rose mulling that she did. And it's beautiful. And there was probably a good 15 to 20 years that she didn't paint. She could paint, but she didn't. And just a couple of years ago, she said, I want to get back to that. And so, she got the paints and the brushes, and now she's been painting. And again, beautiful things. She was able to notice something she truly enjoyed. I don't know, she had a setback, so to speak, around it, rather than just busy, right? She was busy with teenage girls. And so I think maybe what it's not even just a setback, but it's those things that you enjoy that you've let go dormant within you.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you rekindle that and bring it fresh? Because I will say, when child one is interested in tennis, I got so giddy because that meant not only was he going to, I was so excited for him, but then I'm like, ooh, this means I get to play with him too, right?
Yeah.
I get to play tennis again, which is silly. I could have played tennis again. But so I guess maybe that's a question that I'm throwing out there a little bit is sometimes we have these things that we've really enjoyed that we have let go cold for a while for them to come up later, and encouraging yourself to lean in and not run away from that opportunity that presents itself. Like I'm seeing with tennis, or like my mom created for herself with rose mulling.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with where are you aiming your focus and what are you allowing, where are you spending your time and attention, right? And sometimes it feels like we give up some of those things that we give up because A, B, and C are more important. Sometimes we give up the thing that really lights us up. And it's like, why? and right. I don't know. I mean, like for me, it's like I haven't played guitar since before we had kids regularly.
Right.
And it's like, why would I go a day without touching a guitar, let alone how many years I went sometimes where they're just in their cases and put away because I'm not hitting some mark that somebody else has or some expectation that if I was a guitar player, I'd be doing this or that. I think knowing what the intention is from within us versus the external expectations, I guess, is maybe what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe not letting those external thoughts and forces dictate how we show up for ourselves in the things that like truly bring us happiness and joy, I guess. Oh.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm.
I rambled.
The main thing I'm thinking about is really what have I learned and what have I uncovered as I've been reflecting on this idea of a setback from breaking my leg.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I keep going back there, but reaching out to those that support you, that have your best interests in mind, ask questions, ask for help, and use the resources that are available to you. Like if I would have used the athletic trainer,
mm-hmm.
maybe I would be a famous tennis player today. Doubtful.
Awesome.
Doubtful. But I think there were things that I left unused because I didn't feel like I was good enough or my dreams weren't good enough to waste anybody's time with it. I think we often feel like that, not just about playing a sport and a sports injury, but just in general, right? About our ideas, about our creative work. I think the other thing maybe I'm learning through this experience is that it's not too late to dig in. And the reason I'm saying that is it might not be the same as when you've last left it. I'm no longer 20. I no longer can run circles around people on the tennis court. And at the same time, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy the game that I love. It doesn't mean that if with your creative project or what you're doing, if you've let it sit for a while, if your perspective has changed, your steadiness has changed, if your sharpness, it doesn't matter. You can still go and do the thing that brings you joy. That's what I'm thinking about, Keith.
I like it.
Can I say one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
You also don't need to wait to be picked. You don't need to wait to have someone that's across on the other side of the court to return the ball. There are ways that you can continue to pursue what you love, and eventually somebody will notice and ask you to join the team. Or you'll find that wall in your town where you can hit the ball against. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I mean, no one's going to notice you if you don't put yourself out there.
Yeah.
So stop waiting and take the first step, and then the next one, and the next one. And that usually is making yourself a little more visible. So find a space and a place where it feels safe enough for you to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
To hit that ball, and somebody will be like, "Oh, how are you? Do you want to play?"
Exactly.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Do you want to do a quote?
Sure.
Do you want to go first?
I don't know. Mine seems like kind of a mic drop. So.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't read it first, so ready?
Go ahead.
A Light Heart Lives Long by William Shakespeare. Okay. I like this quote, and the reason that it's speaking to me right now is that I'm trying to not take myself so darn seriously right now. I'm trying to find ways to incorporate joy into my life. And when I'm talking about joy, ways to incorporate reading for fun, tennis, as we've been talking about today, and good tunes as I'm driving down the road and doing work at home. So I like it. A Light Heart Lives Long by William Shakespeare.
I like that.
How about you?
All right. So this is Tina Turner.
Ooh.
I did not expect that when I read through it. I like it. Oh, okay. You must love and care for yourself, because that's when the best comes out. And I think that is amazing, because I think that's at the core of everything that we were talking about and around today, and pretty much every day. You take care of yourself, because then you can do your best. And I think our best is helping others also. So thanks, Tina.
I like that.
You ready?
I think so.
All right, let's get out of here.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I love you.
I love you.